Hello everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to tell you one of the most incredible and underrated stories from World War II. It's about a British general whose ideas were once called crazy, impossible, and even useless. But those same ideas ended up saving thousands of lives during the war. This is the story of General Percy Hobart and how his unusual tank inventions cleared nearly 90% of German minefields without causing a single casualty. Before the D-Day invasion in 1944, Europe was heavily controlled by Nazi Germany. Adolf Hitler knew the Allies would try to invade France, so the Germans built a long chain of defenses along the coast called the Atlantic Wall. It was packed with machine gun bunkers, concrete walls, steel obstacles, barbed wire, and most deadly of all, millions of buried landmines. These mines were hidden under the sand, waiting for soldiers or vehicles to step on them. If someone tried to remove them by hand, they could be blown to pieces. If tanks tried to move through them, they would be destroyed. Military experts believed that the Allies might lose thousands of soldiers within the first few minutes of landing on the beaches. This is where General Percy Hobart enters the story. He wasn't like other generals. He was creative, bold, and believed technology could solve problems that humans alone could not. But because of his unusual thinking, the British Army forced him into early retirement before the war. They said his ideas were too strange and unrealistic. However, one person saw his potential: Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Churchill brought Hobart back and gave him a challenge: design special tanks that could survive the minefields, break through German defenses, and protect Allied soldiers during the invasion. General Hobart didn't waste a second. He gathered engineers, mechanics, and soldiers and began turning ordinary tanks into incredible problem-solving machines. These strange and brilliant vehicles were soon nicknamed Hobart's Funnies because they looked so unusual. But they weren't funny at all. They were genius. One of Hobart's most famous inventions was the flail tank, officially known as the Sherman crab. This tank had a giant rotating drum attached to the front with heavy chains hanging from it. As the drum spun at high speed, the chains smashed the ground, detonating hidden landmines before the tank drove over them. It looked insane, a tank whipping chains in every direction, but it worked perfectly. Soldiers could now follow behind it safely, walking across ground that would have killed them minutes earlier. Another one of his inventions was the bobbin tank. This tank carried a huge roll of thick matting. As it moved forward, it rolled out the mat on soft sand or muddy ground, creating a solid path for other tanks and vehicles to drive on without getting stuck. Then there was the fascine tank, which carried giant bundles of wooden sticks. When the tank came across a trench or ditch, it dropped the bundle inside, forming a bridge. Hobart also designed tanks with flamethrowers to burn enemy bunkers, tanks that could swim across water like boats, tanks that could launch bridges, and even tanks that acted as mobile ramps for soldiers to climb over walls. Almost everyone thought these machines were ridiculous when they first saw them. Some generals laughed. Others said it was a waste of time and money. But Hobart didn't care about opinions. He cared about saving lives. Then came the real test, June 6, 1944, the D-Day invasion of Normandy. Thousands of Allied ships, tanks, and soldiers approached the beaches of France. The German defenses were ready to kill anything that moved. But then Hobart's Funnies rolled into action. On the beaches, the Sherman crab flail tanks began spinning their chains, exploding mines in front of them. The ground shook, sand flew into the air, but the tanks moved forward safely. Soldiers followed behind them, walking on ground that had been deadly only seconds earlier. The bobbin tanks laid out strong paths for heavy vehicles to cross the sand. Fascine tanks filled trenches. Bridge-laying tanks helped other tanks cross obstacles. Flamethrower tanks set enemy bunkers on fire, forcing German soldiers to surrender or retreat. The results were unbelievable. In areas where Hobart's Funnies were used, up to 90% of the minefields were cleared without a single casualty. The soldiers were shocked. They expected to die by the thousands, but many survived because of these strange machines. What people once called crazy became one of the smartest strategies of the war. Unfortunately, not all Allied commanders agreed to use Hobart's inventions. Some American units refused to use them, thinking they were unnecessary. As a result, those units faced heavy casualties on certain beaches like Omaha Beach. Meanwhile, beaches where Hobart's tanks were used, like Sword and Juno Beach, saw far fewer losses. General Hobart went from being a dismissed soldier to a war hero. His inventions didn't just win battles, they saved lives. Today, military engineers around the world still use some of his concepts in modern mine-clearing vehicles. So, what can we learn from this story? Sometimes, the ideas that seem crazy at first are the ones that make history. Innovation isn't always accepted right away, but when it works, it changes everything. General Hobart taught the world that courage isn't just about fighting on the front lines. Sometimes it's about thinking differently and refusing to give up. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want more amazing true history content, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Let me know in the comments if you want a part 2 or more stories about World War II inventions. See you in the next video!